So up next, we have a very interesting panel. And if I can just have them come up, we have Mamta Bhandari, who's going to be the session chair. She's an advisor, investor, and head of product. And one really cool fact about her is that every week she goes to a movie theater and she sees a movie. Doesn't matter if it's in English or Hindi, but she's always doing that. So if you ever need a partner, right there. Next up, we have Sumir Chadha, who is the managing partner and co-founder of Westbridge Capital. And his fun fact is that he has been doing deep sea diving for 25 years. So that's pretty cool. And last but not least, we have Murali Vullaganti.
And Anurag Jain.
Oh, okay. And he is the founder and executive chairman of People Shore. And his fun fact is that he has a love-hate relationship with his cat. Hate because his family has left him for a year and a half to take care of the cat, and love because he really has no choice. So, and Anurag, please come on up. And we're gonna leave you to give your fun fact.
I follow my wife anywhere she goes.
It's good advice.
That's a fun guy. Okay. So we have okay. So we couldn't have set the stage better. Deshpande ji talked about giving both in the US and India, so that's perfect for the panel. Our panel is called Give Where You Belong. And I think a lot of people here feel a sense of belonging to two places, two homes. And one is a place where your family or you came from, and one is where we live. And these gentlemen here have taken that double pull and turned it into double leverage. I'm sure he likes that. By taking lessons from here to apply them to India and create impact there, but also take lessons from India and to apply them here. I'm going to quickly introduce the panel and we'll then jump into the topics. Let me start by myself, Mamta Bhandari. I'm a new entrant, a student in the social impact space, so I really look forward to learning from your journeys. I support two organizations, Sokyum Sanitary Pads, which is a reusable sanitary pad company in India, and Boys Who Write, and I'd be happy to talk to you all after the panel, but we should hear from these people. I'm going to start with Murali. Murali, successful entrepreneur, which I'm going to say is true for all of them, so I don't want to repeat that. But in 2009, Murali started Rural Shores to create employment for youth in India. And from there, from the lessons he learned, he was able to create People Shores, which is an organization that creates jobs for underrepresented youth as well as communities that are underdeveloped. We also have Sumir with us. Sumir really is a man of the markets. He takes all the discipline that we have in the markets and applies it to philanthropy, which we love. His gift to Princeton to create the Chadha Center for Global India, as well as the professorship for Indian Studies, is a big long-term investment for impact for decades to come. And Anurag Jain, is someone who's not just successful globally in the companies that he's accomplished, that he has delivered. He's also amazing at doing work at a local level, which we will get into. So my first question to all of you is, what was that moment that started your journey? What that kindled your philanthropic interest, and how has that been shaped over the years? So I'm going to start with you, Anurag, and then we'll take turns.
So I'll tell you a story. So this was the year 2009. I had been in the US for 30 years at that point, or 25 years. I'd built a few companies. At that point, I had 40,000 people working for me. And I'm saying all to say I was a self-pompous guy who ran a big company, who ran around, and I was sort of focused on what I was doing every day, right? We had just gone through a merger, and I had to lay off 14 people one day. So I go to the office, and it's a horrible thing to lay off people at any given point in time. But the problem is when you're at the senior levels, it becomes clinical, almost clinical, and that's the problem in itself. So I go to the office, I do my job, I'm careful, the lawyers have said, do this, don't say that, do all that stuff. The last guy looks at me and he starts crying. And he looks at me and says, you know, I've been working for this company for 30 years. I started with Mr. Pro 30 years ago. And I think tomorrow I will not have a home and I won't have food when I stop getting a paycheck from here. And it then hit me. I said, how's that possible that this person has been here for 30 years, but tomorrow he won't have? Something hit me. I walked out, got into my car, and I was driving home. And we had, in that point, Dallas was going through a lot of infrastructure development, so we had traffic jams. So I was stuck at a traffic light, and I was talking to Gunjan, and I was complaining about my day. I was like, you know, I had to do this, and this is what executives have to do. And I was literally complaining. I was being a victim at this point in time. And suddenly I stopped. I looked up, and I thought I saw a picture of the guy I just fired, the guy who was crying. I looked up, and there's this gigantic board, and I promise you the person on the board looked like the person I just fired, right? And it said, job today, hungry tomorrow. So now I'm stuck, and I'm just looking at this board. And it says, North Texas Food Bank, call the North Texas Food Bank. And so basically there's a local food bank that gave people to people that are food insecure. So I read out the number to Gunjan. And I said, Gunjan, call them. This is a message. This is a sign for me that this is what we need to be involved in. I just did this, and this guy looks exactly like that guy. So Gunjan called them, and the miracle continues, right? So she calls this person at 6 o'clock in the evening, and the food bank is usually closed at 6 o'clock, but a woman picks up, and her name is Colleen, right? Colleen. Colleen then asks her name and then starts talking to her in Hindi. Colleen actually has a mother who was from India and worked at the food bank as the chief philanthropy officer, and of course was half Indian, half American. And I've been involved in that organization for the last 16 years, helping people.
So my case, it's a combination of three things: my own personal journey, and also an influential role model, and there's an epiphany movement. So personal journey, just to give you a background, come from small, low-income family in a small town in India, and my father struggled to get me through the education. I graduated from IIT Kharagpur and then BITS Pilani, came here to Wall Street, worked there for 20 years in the corporate world. And then I'm the scene, during the course of that, I've come across a lot of people like myself who come from far-flung places and struggling to adjust to the socially, to that environment. And so that is one. That triggered me to do something for the folks who make it easier for them. Rather than bringing them to the jobs, bring the jobs to them. Number two, in my case, influential role model is Satya Sai Baba. You know, it's spiritual guide, mentor, but his spirituality is all about selfless service and serving others. And he has done it by through his own organization. It showed the way to do it. So that's actually gave me the courage to do it. So my journey wanted me to do something, and that gave me the courage. And finally, what to do at that epiphany moment, with the idea of doing something, I returned to India, and after 20 years of working in the corporate life, wanting to do something social front. So the courage to go to India, but now what am I going to do? So there I saw, that was the time when the IT BPO industry is really growing leaps and bounds in India. All the companies are hiring thousands of people every month, and they're going to, when they got saturated for the talent in the cities, they're going to small towns and villages, bringing the people from there to the metros and employing them there. Though they're giving a decent salary, but not still enough to bring their families back move them to the cities and lead a comfortable life. Once I bumped into a place where I saw 6 people from these small towns living in a small space, sharing the small space, and saw their families behind, and they themselves struggling in these concrete jungles, right, coming from a nice serene environment from rural communities. That is when it struck to me. If these people have proven that they can do as good a job as an educated urban youth with a little bit of training and skills, developing the skills, why not bring the jobs to them? Why bring them here? So that when the Rural Shows was born, it is all about setting up these technology delivery centers in the rural communities, tier 5, tier 6, and then bring the jobs and hire the rural youth where they are and train them and give them jobs there and deliver the work from remotely from those centers to the corporate,
That's
world.
amazing, Murali. That's amazing. And we would love to, double click on that in my second question. Sumir, please, what was that moment for you?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first, let me just say that Desh, Anurag, and Murali are a tough act to follow. So my story is less about the underprivileged for my first moment of giving. It was more, I was a student at Princeton. I was an undergrad. My parents couldn't afford to pay for the university. It was too expensive. So I was on grants and loans. And I remember writing thank you letters to some of the alumni who had given me grants, and always feeling like a sense of gratitude to Princeton that I could afford to go there. And I loved the place. It was great. I was a computer science major, French literature classes, great liberal arts. The one thing that kept bothering me was nothing related to India. Maybe it was a very white college at the time, very white, and very few Indians on campus, nothing related to India. And I always wanted to have something related to India there. So about 15 years later, I got involved with the university, trying to get the university to be more international. And then about 6-7 years later, we opened a China center and an India center. I got to play a role in India center. And what's exciting is today, my daughter is a student at Princeton, and she's taking a Hindi class. She's taking a course on Indian history, and the university's opened up. And also what's exciting is, we send about 20 Princeton kids a year to do internships with startups in Bangalore. We have a lot of top researchers at Princeton studying things like air pollution in Delhi. We had a big pollution conference. So it's just sort of catalyzing two of the great loves of my life, which is India and Princeton, and bringing them together. So for me, that's my giving story.
No, it's fantastic, because I think there's investing in India, investing here, but there's also the bridge. And I kind of look at these as a bridge. It starts the dialogue. The other area, I'm sure people want to learn about is how over the years have you directed your energy and resources to investing in India, but also here? And I'll tell you where that question's coming from. I know when I moved to this country, we always think of this as all problems solved. There are, they have no problems. This is the real. And when you live here, that's when you realize that, there are so many problems here too. And a lot of, like when we were in India, it was easy to kind of say, this is a problem, this is systemic. But everything here seems very individual focused. If we have media addiction, it's an individual problem. If it's obesity, it's an individual problem. And that's why bringing systemic change is really hard. So how have you, really tried to balance that giving across the two locations? And then we'll start with, maybe Sumir this time.
Yeah, I think giving in both the locations is really important. Most of my US giving, I would say, has been around educational institutions that I've been to, or my kids. But India giving I do a lot of, and we give a lot. I give a lot personally, I give a lot as a firm. And I think one thing that makes it easy and also sad is there's so much to give to. So it cuts across so many things in India. I was shocked. Desh did an amazing job helping create Akshay Patra. And I was amazed when I got involved with Akshay Patra about 10 years ago that, I'd gone to visit one of the kitchens. Firstly, I was surprised the food was delicious. And then I asked my Bangalore partners, right, who are closer to India than I am. I'm based here in California. I asked them, how much do you think it costs to feed one kid for the whole year, right? And I think they said $300. I said, tell me dollars. And the number was like $40, right?
Wow.
And so reality is there's just so much need. Money goes so far. And so I'm involved. What I've realized for myself is time is precious, so I'd rather just work, earn money, and then write a check.
Oh, that's
so my
totally
model is
good.
not to spend time with the charities, but to just write checks where I see good causes. So I've been supporting maybe about 5 or 6 directly, and then as a firm, we support maybe about 15 or 20.
And that's where we need different models for different people. Murali is taking a different, take, but we'd love to hear from you, because I just learned before the conference that that you have moved to Clarksville, Mississippi, to do some of this work in the last 6 years.
Sure. So first of all, I want to say that rural shows or people shows are not philanthropic organizations. They are not charity. They are probably, at best I can describe them as altruistic endeavors, and we are for profit, social enterprises. But where the purpose, they're all purpose driven, then the people, then process, then profit. That is the order in which they go. Now, so when I started rural shows back in 2009, we built it, and as I said, we are profit. so ran that for 8 years, and then I stepped down from operation role. In the process, build a good, strong executive team to run that, take it forward and run it, and still it's growing. I'm still the founder and on the involved in the strategy and the board member. But the team is running the show now and growing it further. We have 3,500 people working there, but in the last 15 years, more than 27,000 rural youth built their careers through people shows. Now, and then I came back in 2017, started my journey here in the Bay Area, first center here. Then 2 years later, when I was doing the second center, I realized that we wanted to go to the poorest of the poor in the country, which is Mississippi Delta. So when I was doing that there, I realized that there's no trust. I mean, it's becoming difficult for me to earn the trust of the people. Because here is 90% black Americans, and they have no, they've gone through generations of, travesties, and they don't trust anyone, and particularly a short Indian fellow coming from Silicon Valley and saying that he's going to bring jobs to the community. So I had to move to Clarksdale to earn that trust, so that I'm in business, So I moved there and still living there after 6 years. I mean, amazing journey. But once you earn the trust, they open up their hearts and then welcome you and they shower their love. So we are recipients of that love, me and my family. And we started growing. So the investment wise, it is investing in the right leadership team that you bring along and come and bring them along, and with the likely minded people, come from with the industry experience, passion, and wanting to do it, So that really enabled us to grow and scale. Today we have 9 centers in the US, 4 of them in economically challenged rural communities and 5 in inner cities like Bronx, and delivering the work for our clients like Morgan Stanley, Accenture, and all. So you have to make investments in the leadership team. Of course, once you do that and purpose-driven and take care of the people and nurture them, bring them to talent and skills, and with a process and systematic way of doing things, delivering high quality, profits will follow.
That's
and
amazing.
The profits will basically scaling it.
Instead of focusing on US or India, I'd like to offer a framework, and this
Love
framework
it.
is not mine.
Yeah.
It is a teacher of mine that gave me the framework. So what he said is, and most of you know the concept of karma in this room, so it's not a complicated concept, right? He said, you have to give back where you have a karmic debt. And the question is, where do you have a karmic debt? You have a karmic debt to anybody that feeds you. What does feeding mean? So your parents brought you to the earth, and they did a lot of work to get you there. You have a karmic debt. The second thing is that spiritual organizations that feed you energetically in whatever form, right? Meditation, could be anything. They feed you. Therefore, you have a debt to them. Third one is teachers. Teachers that have taught you, and teacher doesn't mean the teacher in school. Teachers along the way. Is a teacher. These teachers, you owe them a debt because they brought you something that you don't have today, right? And the last one is basically the community that feeds you really, which is where you live. And by the way, the first and the last, he told me, were the most important. The community that feeds you is probably the most important, which if you live in Dallas or in the US, then you have to take care of people in Dallas in the US.
I love that
followed
framework.
that framework. And then underneath that, we focus on food, health, sort of basic food, health, education, and spirituality. And we've tried to meet that framework across the 2 countries. I call it Karam Bhumi and Jan Bhumi, the best we can.
That's amazing, yeah. So that's a really simple but deep way to think about it. I know that as you guys make these investments or give back even within that framework, you have some sort of investment thesis or some kind of impact metrics that you all track. Walk us briefly through how you think about, that criteria, and are the reasons different to give? And is the impact that you're looking or the metric that you're tracking different depending on different places that you invest in? And we can maybe start with Murali this time. Sorry, putting everybody on the spot.
Okay, no problem. So in our case, obviously the job that we are creating is the first level of impact. How many jobs we are creating, how many careers, not jobs, right? You're enabling them to grow, in their career. And then we measure the multiplier effect of that. In those communities, when you have 100 people deployed in that center and giving them in the US, it's called family sustaining wages, not minimum wages. That creates a tremendous economic impact in that community. The whole community gets benefited. Today it's about 3.7, that multiplier effect. It's called local multiplier effect, which means for every job you create, there's so many people will benefit, and through that indirect jobs and impact in the community. So that's how we measure it in both in India and here. And India is much bigger because it's all rural communities, and every center that we have, 14 centers in India through 9 states, every center is basically impacts at least a dozen villages around, because people come from those villages and work there in that center. So the effect is much more than here. So we follow that multiple effect, but it's mainly the success of the delivery is what matters, because that's enable us to scale the quality of the work we deliver to the clients. Because our clients expect us to deliver the same quality that Infosys or Accenture do. And by the way, Accenture is our partner too in India and here. And we are scaling through them also. They are downstreaming their work. The clients work to us, both here and India. So that's how it.
Yeah, maybe you can have Anurag go next.
Sure. I do think metrics matter. Most of the people in this room are used to running corporations, and I do think having it down to a metric, although it's always more than a metric, you have to realize there is a black and white side and a gray side, but the metric helps other people understand it, to communicate it, and for you to feel the rent. So most of my work is in food, and the metric we have taken is how many million meals are required for the food insecure. So in Dallas alone, we need 120 meals, is what million meals a year is what we give out. What we think we need to give is 240 million meals, so there's a gap. How do you shorten the line so less meals required, more important than giving meals out? And how do you eventually get from 120 million to 240 million meals? So that's sort of one metric, right? At the Feeding America level, we give where there's 10 meals to every $1 that we give out. But the question, and something you guys should know, is that the current economic environment, 9 billion meals have been taken away from people who need it in the US in the last bill that was signed. And something that the leaders in this room have an obligation, will have to stand up and fill that gap one way or the other.
Go ahead. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I would just say I'd add one more thing, that I think one good thing about giving, in India at least, I find is that there's just so many groups that need it that it's actually hard to go wrong. You know, it's actually difficult to go wrong. There's just huge needs in many, many areas. So we certainly give, and I give to many different types of charities. I think the things that are important are finding a group that's really mission-driven and passionate, and very frugal. You know, and I think you can find those two things, actually so many good ones to give. And frankly, I think the bigger challenge I find is that if you look at charity in India today, I want to say something like 80% is CSR. What is CSR? Every company is legally required to give 1 or 2% of profits to charity. And they probably wouldn't do it if it was not legally required, okay? So like, that's 80% of Indian charity today. And despite huge wealth in India and in our Indian American community here, we don't give that much. Indians in India don't give that much, right? And so actually there's just huge needs. So I think the main thing is to give. And then I think the second order thing is where do you give to optimize. But frankly, you know, there's just huge needs.
Absolutely, yeah, this is your stage. No, take your man.
So Anurag has made a very good point. Metrics is good, the numbers, quantifying the impact and all, that's more objective way of looking at it. But there's a lot of intangible, soft aspects that we tend to ignore. We only come to know that when you actually hear the stories of the people. In our case, particularly the employees, as I said, we impacted 27,000 rural youth, building the careers there for them. Everyone has a story to tell. I just want to share one story from the rural show's journey. I met a girl in a place called Bagepalli, which is about 100 kilometers from Bangalore, where our first center was. After starting that center a year later, I went back and speaking to the folks, said, how did your life change after joining rural shows? There's one girl that said, now I can choose my own husband. whom to marry. I said, okay, can you elaborate on that? She said about a year ago before joining, she was being forced to marry an old man because her father owed to that man in basically to get their loan and not able to pay. In return, that old man asked to give her daughter to him. And she was, obviously, the women, the young ladies have the least voice in the rural communities in India, as you know. And she couldn't say, but she was again struggling. Then to her friend, she came to know about rural shows. She came and applied and got job and working and started earning. Then suddenly that pressure actually went back. Her parents saw that she's bringing money every month after month, so they stepped back. Eventually, she was able to pay off the debt the father owed to that old man. And then she said, I can choose who I want to marry. Similarly, one story here in People Shows, when we set up the center in San Jose, one of the person which employed was victims of a domestic violence here, and a woman with a young child. And she was thrown out of the house. She was living in a shelter home in San Jose. And she started with us, and we trained her, noticing her skills. So we actually trained her on RPA, Automation Anywhere platform, and we delivering the work to Google and all on that front. Then she left, after a few years, she left and joined Accenture in Nashville, and she sent a picture a year later to us, where she was sitting in a balcony of a condo she bought, and put her feet on the table with a chai cup in her, a tea cup in her hand, and then she says, "People shows enabled me to achieve this."
Okay. I know that I've been well fed by Indiaspora, so I owe them on ending on time, but I think we can do this. So 30 seconds to, a few more seconds, because what would you say to people in the audience about giving back and why and how, whichever area you think you would like to talk to this audience? And then we can start with Anurag, maybe?
This is Silicon Valley. What do people do here best is set up companies. So I'll end with a story. So my favorite startup was in COVID. March 8th was my birthday, and March 9th, I was at the food bank, and we had 3 problems. We said, look, the whole food bank is run by volunteers. We need 120,000 volunteers every year. And they weren't going to be able to come to the food bank, but the food need was growing, and it was more complex because we had to package it and deliver it in the car versus the way we did it earlier. At the same time, we had just started a company that gave people jobs through shifts, kind of the Uberization of work. And this company said that by 2028, 60% of Americans might be doing Uber-style work. At that point, an idea was born. Can we hire, and hospitality workers, if you remember, were the first round of layoffs, with thousands of them being laid off. So can we take those hospitality workers, get them a shift at the food bank to help pack and sort this food so we can get it to people that we want? And we started this company at that moment on March 9th. On 10th, we incorporated, and the 11th, we started. And we thought in 2 months, and actually at that point, we thought in 16 weeks, COVID would be gone, and this company would no longer exist. That company existed for 2 years. We ended up getting to 120 communities, and we fed 12 million meals, and over 100,000 people got some wages during that period of time. So that's my give back.
Murali, you, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah.
60 seconds.
Thank you.
For Murali.
You have been generous. Yeah. So this morning, Emma talked about, the kind of feelings that are being developed in the country about the successful Indian diaspora here, right? We have become basically envy of the locals, right? So that's because we are doing well to ourselves and mostly, and we're also doing a lot of charitable work, but most are being channeled to India. Not much. Only now we are thinking of doing something in the country here. I think we need to do a lot more. We can share all the numbers with everybody, so many doctors saving so many lives and all, but everybody has to feel that impact that is being created by us. I think we have the wherewithal to make it happen, and we should make it happen and challenge the conventional assumptions, conventional wisdom, conventional notions, conventional method, model, and approach. challenge those and do something we all can do, and we can do together even more so. But there is an opportunity for us to prove to the community, the country, that we mean something else beyond being successful to ourselves. So that's
Amazing. I'm going to let Sumir, you can get in 30 seconds as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just echo what Murali said. I think one thing I've experienced, I'm sure many of you have here, if you're here, you're probably quite excited about charitable giving. I've tried to raise money for charities through my friends in our community. I have to say it's pretty hard. It's tough to get money out
Tell
of
us
us.
about
Okay,
it.
so I think the thing I would say is just to remember how lucky we all are. And one thing to measure, actually, I did this, was a friend of mine who had recommended this. Just ask yourself, look at your tax returns last year and ask yourself, what % of my income did I give away this year? You know, and if that, on average for our community, that's less than 1%. You know, so I think, and I think it really begins with oneself. My number was pretty low, so I'm working on myself. And I think just encourage all of us to take a hard look at that. What % of your income are you giving every year? Is that the right amount, or should we be giving more to local charities? And I think the answer for at least the vast majority of our communities, we need to do a lot more, as Murali's saying.
Absolutely. So they say that if you want to go fast, go alone. You know, you want to go far, go with someone. But if you want to get somewhere and be smart, follow a map. And these gentlemen have given you a small map, and I hope we can all learn from that. Thank you.